Hey there, got a new knife review for you. Today I'm looking at the SOG Flash II model FSA-98. My short answer on this knife is it's a good value and it's a very good EDC choice. General price and availability on this is anywhere from $35 to $50, about $40 average. You can find it a lot of places online, Amazon.com. You can find it at Walmart locally. So your nearest Walmart probably has this in stock, and the price will kind of fluctuate depending on the color, the configuration. There are a few different versions. There's a plain edge version. The one I have here is the partial serrated version. It comes in different colors: blue, green, yellow. There's a rescue version, I believe. It also has a version with aluminum handles, and also one with a black titanium nitride coating. So there's a lot of variations on this, and the price will fluctuate depending on which one you choose. But the average price for the base black model with either the plain edge or the serrated edge would be about 40 bucks. I actually bought this one a couple times. This is the second time I've owned this knife. I originally purchased this back in, I want to say 2006 or 2007, and I think I paid a bit more for it then. It was probably about $50, $55. And I carried it for about a year, used it off and on, and eventually sold it, tried something else, was just kind of changing out some knives in my collection. And I actually purchased this knife with the SOG Twitch 2, which I reviewed back in January of this year. And I picked them both up for a really nice price. So it was fairly inexpensive, and I figured, I'll pick it up and give it a whirl again. And I've kept it ever since. And I'm pretty happy with it. So had it, for about a year the first time. I had it for only a few months this time, but I have carried it off and on past few months and reacquainted myself with the blade. Let's get into the specs here. The blade length is 3.5 inches. The overall length when opened is 8 inches. And when closed, you're looking at 4 5/8 to 4 3/4 inches. I'll back out a little bit on the camera here and I'll hold it up for some close-ups. The weight is 3.1 ounces according to SOG. However, on my scale, I weighed it and arrived at 2.9 ounces, and I tend to lean towards my measurement on that one, so I think 2.9 ounces, maybe even 3 ounces, is a little bit more accurate. But theirs isn't too far off. I'm not really sure why theirs weighed more when they decided to put the specs up. The blade steel is AUS 8, and sorry for any fingerprints on there. Has been getting a bit of use lately. AUS 8 steel, and as you can see, it is a satin finish. Blade thickness is 1/8 of an inch, and you can see it's a drop point blade, and of course we do have a full flat grind. And with a nice thick blade stock like this and that full flat grind, as many people will tell you, it's a very good slicing design, and it does excel at slicing. The partial serrations, by the way, were not my choice. It was just, like I said, I bought it with that SOG Twitch 2, and that was what the fella had that I bought it from, so that's what I've got. I would have preferred a plain edge, but the serrations on here are very effective, and I do like SOG's serration design. It's pretty similar to Spyderco's, and I think it works well. Handle materials are referred to, this plastic type material is referred to as glass reinforced nylon, so I imagine it's pretty darn close in composition to FRN. It might even be the same thing, and SOG is just giving it a different name, which of course is fiberglass reinforced nylon. The handle construction, the way it's held together, is with 3 body screws. There's 1 pocket clip screw, and then a pivot screw. And those are all 2mm hex screws, which is something we don't see too often in knives. A lot of times manufacturers will use Torx. In this case, they use 2mm hex screws. They are effective, and they hold it together very well, and it is easy to take apart. If you need to adjust the pivot, if you need to remove the clip, that all can be done with ease. As far as the handles on the inside, and I don't know how well it's going to come out in this light, probably not well at all, because just looking through the viewfinder I can't see inside that blade handle, but inside 1/2 of the handle, in fact this portion, I have this set for tip up right hand, and so this side right here is oddly skeletonized. There's a portion that's kind of milled out, or it's kind of scooped out, but there's no liner in there, so we don't really have nested liners to speak of. It's just sort of gutted, but it is what it is. It's probably not the absolute strongest handle design, or handle composition or construction, but you know, it's similar to what a lot of other manufacturers use, like Spyderco with their FRN, their Delica, and their Endura series. So if you're familiar with any of those types of knives, this is going to be about on par with that. So you know, like I said, no nested liners, no steel liners, but that helps keep the weight down so that it's very light, and it's still very functional, works quite well. It is a closed back design, as you can see, and it you know, to clean it you're going to have to get in there with your toothpick and a tissue, or you know, a Q-tip, something like that. So not quite as easy to clean as it could be, but no big deal, and it does give it a more solid feel, so that it's not, you know, quite as wiggly as it might be if that were open. It does have some light texturing, and you can see it there. For as deeply grooved as it is, it's not very aggressive, but I like it because it's actually fairly comfortable. So it does give you something to grab onto, but it's not so highly textured that it becomes uncomfortable or wears inside of your pocket or anything like that. And speaking of texturing, we do have some you know, pseudo jimping on the back here. It's useless. There's pretty much no additional grip on these little ribbed portions versus the smooth parts on the spine. There is a bit of functional serrations or jimping in the finger groove area here. So these are fairly functional, or as functional as they can be. You know, I don't know how much use they are as far as keeping your hand from sliding up, but they're definitely, they provide more positive grip than those on the back of the spine here. The overall design and comfort when I hold it in my hand is good. Like a lot of knives, I wish that they had left out this short little thumb ramp and just made it straight across at the back. Maybe, you know, if they were so inclined, maybe made more aggressive jimping at the back there. But I would like that to go straight across, because when gripped, you know, farther up, my thumb, the joint on my thumb wants to rest right where that little ramp is, and it's not very bothersome, but it could be a little bit more comfortable. But other than that, quite comfortable to hold. For long periods of time, the butt of the knife at the clip might rub in the palm of your hand, but I haven't noticed it to be, you know, a very big deal. So overall, I think it's quite comfortable. And it is a little on the thick side compared to some other knives in similar size. It's a little bit thicker than those others, but it does give you a good grip, and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't force the spine of the blade or the inside of the handles into your hand where it might feel sharp or abrasive in some way. So that's nice. We do have a lanyard hole on the handle. However, if you can't tell, that is very minuscule, and it is not an easy task to get some 550 paracord through there. In fact, I was not able to pull or push full standard 550 paracord through here. I had to gut some paracord, and then using a method told to me by Tim, also known as Weavers of Eternity here on YouTube, I was able to use one of the inner strands to pull the gutted paracord from one side and out the other, and that was the only way I was able to get it through. And even then, the gutted paracord was still snug from one side to the other. It couldn't be pulled quickly through. It wasn't really loose. So beware, if you're planning on putting a fancy lanyard on there, be prepared that you might have to do some fancy work to get it through there. So something to keep in mind. We do have a pocket clip, as mentioned. It is tip up position only, but it is left and right side, so I think that's really nice. If you're a lefty, you can carry it just as comfortably as a right-handed person. Although on that note, I will say that the lock, which SOG refers to as a pivot lock, piston lock, excuse me, the piston lock is only actuated on the right-hand side of the knife. So if you are left-handed, you will have to use your index finger. If you're going to close it one-handed, you'll be using your index finger to unlock the knife. And I'm not really sure how easy that's. It was kind of difficult for me, but I am right-handed, so for you lefties, take note, that might be an issue. As far as how it carries in my pocket, it's quite comfortable. It sits very low. Obviously, it has this extremely deep carry clip where the clip actually extends beyond the butt of the handle of the knife. And it sits all the way completely down in your pocket, and you won't see any of the handle of the knife unless you were to look down on top. You know, if someone was standing close to you and looking down at your pocket, they would see it, but otherwise all you'll see is just this clip portion. The clip's kind of funky looking. I'm not the biggest fan of the way that it looks, but it's, you know, it's interesting, and it's not real garish like some other pocket clips are known to be like that junkyard dog from Kershaw. Yikes. Overall balance of the knife is pretty good. It feels blade heavy. It seems to kind of want to center in that farthest finger groove, but just maybe it's just a mental thing. Maybe it just kind of feels that way, but it feels like it's blade heavy, but not to its detriment. It's not so bad it's going to bother you. It's just something to note. The opening mechanism is a dual thumb stud, another nice touch, so that if you are left-handed and you flip it to the other side, you can use your thumb to flick it out of there, right or left-handed. So that's nice, and it's even size on either side. Sticks out the same amount, so that's cool. And it does have assisted opening, so it has a spring that kicks a tension of some kind that kicks the blade out all the way once you start it with the thumb stud. And I'm not a big fan of assisted opening knives. I like my knives to be manual, so I can open them as slow as I please. And with these, unless you're doing a two-handed approach, you kind of generally have to just kind of let it fling out, which might not always be desired. But it does work very well. It's pretty fast. I think I can open some of my manuals a little bit faster, but it does the job. Can't fault them for that. SOG has also included a safety lock within the handle of the knife, and the main purpose of that being to prevent the knife from opening accidentally. Obviously you wouldn't want it to open in your pocket, so when engaged the knife cannot open, and when disengaged the space inside actually turns like a reddish orange, so you know that the knife is ready to open. So it's something that I don't use on my assisted opener knives. I've never had any problems with this particular one opening in my pocket at all, and I don't foresee any issues, but it is a nice little feature that SOG has decided to include. Blade center is pretty good. See if I can get to focus there. It's pretty darn centered, which a lot of times with these FRN knives is not always the case, because that composite material on the outside can be a little bit wiggly or wavy the way that it gets processed. However, at the factory sometimes it can have little bends or warps in it, and this one came out reasonably well centered, all things considered. Pivot smoothness is not really a big issue. It is smooth, but there's not really much to speak on, and you won't really notice it very much as you open it because it does open so fast. I didn't notice any grittiness or graininess in either of the ones that I've owned, so that's nice. And now we get to the issue of the lockup. As mentioned, this does use the piston lock, which is fairly similar to, at least in how it's actuated, it's similar to Benchmade's Axis lock, but in how it actually functions, it's a little bit different. It's almost like a mix between an Axis lock and a lockback design. The lock bar being kind of concealed in the back of the knife there. I have a little bit of an issue with the lockup on this one. As with a lot of SOG folders, I've got some side-to-side play and some up and down wiggle or wobble as well. But in addition to that, putting just a bit of pressure on the spine, you probably won't see it on camera, but putting a bit of pressure on the spine of the blade, you can almost see it, will actually cause the blade to kind of bend. And I think what's happening is actually the plastic is probably ever so slightly, or excuse me, the glass reinforced nylon is probably ever so slightly deforming with that pressure on the spine. And I'm not really going to force it. I don't want to damage the knife, unnecessarily, and I'm not the type to use my knives very aggressively or for really heavy duty stuff. For a hard use job, I would go with a fixed blade, but as a point of interest, I did want to mention that seems a little iffy, and I wouldn't want to put a lot of stress on the spine of the blade. So if you're wanting to get a knife to use and abuse, some real heavy use, I would look elsewhere. I would say that this one, just from the way it feels to me, does not seem like it would be up to the task for very hard use. Heavy shock to the spine of the blade, not going to be a good idea with this one. So just another little something, another little thing to make a mental note of if you're shopping around for this blade. Factory edge on this knife was excellent. I did buy it secondhand from someone, but they had hardly used it at all, so it pretty much had the factory edge on it. And SOG's factory edges are really nice. At least of all the examples I've tried, their edge is not as toothy as other companies. It seems like they take a little bit more time with it. It's very fine, and it's usually pretty close to polished. I did strop mine. I've sharpened it several times, and I've stropped it, so mine is almost a mirror edge. but it takes a very nice edge that AOS 8 sharpens up quickly, and it holds an edge for a pretty good amount of time. It's pretty similar to if you're familiar with 440A or 8CR13 MOV. It's going to be about the same as that. So pretty good steel overall. I do really like the factory edge. The edge bevels were pretty good from the factory, pretty even. Probably could have been cut back a little bit more towards the tip, but not a big deal, and not anything that will cause the blade to suffer over time. I do like that full flat grind, and as mentioned, it is a good slicer, so that's also really cool. Overall looks are good. I think it's pretty interesting overall in design. Something to note when you carry it in your pocket, because it's narrower at the top, it makes it a little bit easier than some other brands of knives as far as reaching down into your pocket past the spine of the blade to get things out. And because the back of the knife is smooth, that also kind of aids in making it quick to retrieve things from the bottom of your pocket. And if it was tipped down, you could see you'd have a lot more bulk to be dealing with. So another little positive there. I'll just kind of go over quickly my pros and cons, overall of this knife. The pros are that it is very light, it's very comfortable to carry, it's of a good size, there's a lot of good useful blade, excellent factory sharpness, it's reasonably comfortable to use, it opens very fast, it is because of that deep carry clip, it does have a quite discreet carry, so it tucks away in your pocket, and if that's important to you, it isn't to me, but if it is to you, that's definitely going to do the job. It's inexpensive, it sharpens quickly, and it holds a decent edge. Having said those positives, my cons are that the blade is kind of wiggly. Like I mentioned, side to side and front to back, it's a little fidgety. I think that the handle could be a little bit thinner, and to me that's an issue. I don't like bulky knives. I would like for it to have been thinner. I forgot to mention it before, but I don't like that the clip has a tendency to twist from side to side when screwed down. Now you can really crank on the screw to tighten it down a little bit more, but I wouldn't recommend it in case you strip out the threading. But I don't like that. I think that an additional screw to mount the clip would have definitely prevented that little side-to-side wiggle, and it's not a big deal, and I don't think it's going to come out of your pocket for any reason, but it's just one of those little things, a little design issue that I think that they should have resolved before committing this one to final production. I don't like that crazy small lanyard hole either. I think that should have been enlarged in some way, maybe a different shape or something to make it easier to feed the most commonly used cordage through that hole, which of course is 550 paracord. And as I mentioned before, also that lockup, any sort of shock to the spine, I think is not going to go well with this blade. I don't have as much confidence in that lockup as I do with a lot of other knives in the same size and price range. As far as what I've used it for, general tasks, like all my knives, opening boxes, packaging, tape, cutting down cardboard, breaking down boxes, cutting a little bit of food here and there, whittling a little bit of wood, just general stuff. And I think that it excels at all those tasks. I think that's pretty much what SOG designed it for. My overall opinion of SOG is that it seems like they're kind of suffering in the design department lately. They tend to be kind of borrowing a lot of designs from other companies, and I'm not really going to say one way or the other how I feel about that, but it's just something that I'm not seeing as much originality from them as we used to, and I think they're kind of playing it safe, and maybe they're going a little bit more budget-minded than they might have in past previous years. So that being said, the community reception or their popularity in the knife community is quite a bit lower than I think it could be if they were hiring in maybe some fresh blood, maybe getting some more innovative designs, and addressing some of the issues that people take with their knives, like their lockup. And some of the fit and finish on some of their models can be a little bit sloppy from time to time. Real quick, let me give you, this is another long one, sorry, another long review. Let me give you some quick size comparisons, maybe some other stuff that you might choose to go with instead. Spyderco Endura, similar blade length, it's obviously a little bit longer, similar handle materials with that FRN, but I don't know if you'll be able to see it here, but the handle is considerably thinner on Spyderco's knife, and I'm not sure if the locking mechanism or the opening mechanism on the Flash 2 is what causes it to be thicker, but I do wish it was a bit thinner and a little bit more in line with the thickness of the Endura. Here is the Kershaw Skyline, another knife at a similar price. The Spyderco Endura, you're looking at more like $50 to $55, so quite a bit more. although I do think that overall it is a better value, and I put a little bit more confidence in this knife. The Kershaw Skyline is about the same price as the SOG Flash II. Obviously you have a smaller blade. It is not a full flat ground. This is a saber grind. But very comfortable. I like the G10 handles on the Skyline. As far as which I would choose one over the other, it's hard to say because I really do like that blade shape on the SOG. That one's a bit of a toss-up, and I'd say you'd be happy, going with either one of those. Same could be said for the, let me take that one out of the way, the CRKT Ripple. Same price, $30 to $40 is what you're going to pay on that quote-unquote Walmart edition. And, this one's a little bit more in line with the Skyline as far as the size and the overall comfort and functionality, but another one that you might be kind of looking at if you were to walk into a brick and mortar store or you're looking online for a similar price knife. Really, any three of these choices would be excellent. It's really hard for me to pick, any one over the others. I would probably give my preference to the Skyline because, one, I do like that it does have tip up and tip down carry. However, it does not have left-handed pocket clip position, which is kind of unfortunate. And the Ken Onion Ripple only has right side tip down. And so SOG kind of wins out over both of those as far as being lefty friendly and the other two not. And then finally, just for some size comparison, another assisted opener. Kershaw Leak, similar price, not really directly comparable. They're a bit too different in some ways to where I wouldn't say that they were directly competing with one another. And of course the SOG Twitch 2, a much smaller knife. Drastically different design, but just if you have any of these other very common knives, that will give you some size comparison. So that's pretty much my whole review. As far as my overall recommendation, yes, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's a very good knife, and I think if you buy one, if you're already interested in the design, you've been looking at it online, and you think it's going to make you happy, I think it will. I think you'll be pleased with it. I think it's fun to use, I think it's of a good size, and I think it has a very good edge. As long as you can live with the slightly iffy lockup and the overall strength of the knife, I think you'll be pleased. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.